Last year, LeEco made a splash by releasing a phone that was one of the first to sport the Snapdragon processor of the time. While they don't necessarily have that feather in their cap with this affordable flagship device, they're hoping that it will still make a lot of waves. It's Josh Vergara from Android Authority. What's going on, everybody? And this is the LeEco Le Pro3. To any avid smartphone fans, you might find that the Le Pro3 looks incredibly familiar. Yes, we do admit as well that it looks like a OnePlus 3. Now, that comparison might actually come back a little bit later in the review, but we had to put that out there first. From there, however, the metal body does have a glossy feel to it, which gives it a nice sheen even if it is a little bit fingerprint prone. Now, the size of that screen helps the phone handle really well, especially in one hand. It's not that difficult to get from side to side or from top to bottom. And from there is the lack of a headphone jack. Now, this is a bit of a bold choice by a company like LeEco, which is trying to really penetrate the Western market. However, you do get an adapter that we have misplaced once or twice already that adapts the USB-C port into a headphone jack. Overall, the phone is quite good looking. However, the fact that it looks so familiar kind of detracts from the overall package, at least to us. It begs the question, besides the different logos that are on the back and the one that serves as the home capacitive button, what exactly defines LeEco's design language in this particular smartphone cycle? Granted, the phone looks and feels really good still, but starting things off with such a derivative style might actually foreshadow the future of the Le Pro 3. As we've already mentioned, the 5.5-inch screen helps in the handling department, though having a phone at an affordable price point means they have to cut a couple of corners, and that begins with the resolution. 1080p is an unsurprising solution to have on a phone of this price, and we're not going to really knock it down for not having Quad HD resolution. What we will say though is that at 1080p, this IPS screen actually has a couple of missteps. In the standard LeEco color mode, which does have a vivid mode that you can switch to, we just found that the colors were a little bit muted and didn't have the vibrancy and the punch that we would really want. From there, the easiest problem that we can see at first glance is the large bezel around the display. It's just kind of hard to ignore, and those black bars are really noticeable, especially when playing games or watching videos. It's about as standard as you can get. There are definitely better display experiences out there even with other phones of this price point. So general users won't really find a whole lot to hate about the screen aside from maybe the bezel, but unfortunately it doesn't overachieve at all. We have to preference this performance section by saying that the EUI that LeEco put on here as the software had quite a few hiccups. So as the Snapdragon 821 has already proven itself as a reliable processing package, we just saw that there were some crashes and some force closes with a couple of apps during our experience with the phone. I did play a few good games on here, including the Trail, which is one of the more lag-prone experiences available right now, and it wasn't any worse on here than, let's say, on the Pixel. Getting through all of the different applications and jumping between them using the recent app screen is actually a breeze, and going among all of the different home screens is really not all that difficult. It's just going into particular applications and seeing a few of the bugs that really brought this down for us. And unfortunately, that inconsistency continued in hardware, but we'll start off with a couple of positive points. Calls are actually really good on the LeEco Le Pro 3, mainly because of the phone speaker that doubles as another speaker. And to that point, having dual speakers is actually a huge get for this phone, mainly because while we were watching YouTube videos, for example, or playing games, we never really felt like we had to connect Bluetooth headsets or even adapt our wired headphones to the device because the sound already was doing a great job.
Yeah, no, it's just well, not exactly. The restaurant is called Not Meat, like the not is in quotes. Oh, I don't think I noticed that. Yeah, it's because we like meat.
With certain Bluetooth speakers that I tried to use, I found that the NFC that I wanted to use to connect them together was really inconsistent, and then even then, once I got the phone connected to the Bluetooth speaker, that connection would cut out from time to time. It's one of those experiences that you kind of take for granted until it starts to get wonky. The fact that NFC and Bluetooth would ever cut out was something that I couldn't help but notice. Another thing that was a little bit inconsistent was the fingerprint reader. Now, it felt like I had to press the fingerprint reader more than once from time to time, and then even then just hold my finger there until the phone unlocked and woke up. When the fingerprint reader works, it actually works quite well. It's just that it was a bit inconsistent and was something that we couldn't help but notice. However, the brightest spot for hardware is definitely the battery life. It is dependent on the 4070 mAh battery, which is a higher capacity found on even flagship devices these days. I was able to get a screen on time with an upper limit of around 5 hours. Now for me, that's actually pretty good, and we do give it good marks, but it's also kind of expected for a battery that is that size. The camera of the Le Pro 3 is a 16 megapixel shooter capable of 4K video recording and has a few different modes available to the shooter. Before that, there is a front-facing shooter of 8 megapixels that has a beauty mode that is on by default. Even at number 3 out of 5, it does feel a little bit too aggressive, but even then the selfies from this phone are pretty much just decent at best. The app in general is not the fastest one out there, mainly in the sense that the shutter to file speeds take a little bit longer than we would like. Still, it is pretty utilitarian. You're able to swipe towards the different modes and then swipe up for a couple of extra modes depending on where you are. The thing that really got us, however, was that HDR is a mode. It's not a setting that you can turn to auto on or off. Instead, you have to make the effort to turn on HDR so you can get those better photos. So as such, the pictures coming from the Le Pro 3 are actually not all that bad. We mentioned before that the screen kind of had muted colors, and this is one of the great examples of that. The pictures on the phone when we reviewed them didn't look all that great, but once I got these photos onto a computer, I actually found that the color saturation was probably my favorite part. Despite the lack of detail in lower light situations for most broad daylight photos, the color actually made the photos pop a little bit more, and I was actually quite impressed by that. General users will be able to enjoy their smartphone photography on the Le Pro 3, though prosumers will probably wish that there was a bit more speed in the app and probably a little bit more control. And finally, in software, the EUI brings its Asian-styled flavor of Android. That means typically no app drawer, and some of the elements might look quite different from Western styles of Google's OS. LeEco, to their credit, do try to move some elements around, like for example taking the quick settings and putting them in the recent app screen. There are actually quite a few options and features here that you can take advantage of as long as you really need to, and the notification dropdown is actually a bit cleaner because of it. Where LeEco hopes that the EUI will separate itself is through its LeEco streaming services. LeEco did well to get quite a few different partnerships with networks like CISO and Showtime, but a lot of that content can be found in the Le app, but where things start to get convoluted is where they have the Le Live, which is where the app drawer button would have been. It brings you to a grid of 3x3 content distributors that all stream content straight to the phone on an ongoing basis. Now, overall, the main issue that we have here is that the average user will be a bit confused and probably overwhelmed by the overall experience. Obviously, LeEco wants to make sure their streaming services are at the forefront, but without any guidance as to what exactly is going on here, users might get a little bit wary of it and just install a third-party launcher. While there are a few perks like 5 terabytes of photo and video storage included that also backs up all the data of the phone, it's a little tough to recommend a whole new bill payment system just to enjoy what is supposedly supposed to be the best and biggest part of the Le Pro 3. One last perk of being part of the LeEco ecosystem is that members can get the Le Pro 3 at a pretty deep discount that makes this phone one of the most affordable ones out there today. Starting at $399, the phone can be on a flash sale at the Le Mall and come in at $299. It's undoubtedly a wonderful price, but as you may have found in this review, you kinda get what you pay for. For its price, the LeEco Le Pro 3 is a solid device, but it only really makes sense as a recommendation if acquired at $299. And for its full price, there are plenty of other phones to consider out there, including the OnePlus 3. It brings an inconsistent experience overall with Le features and software that aren't particularly useful for anyone that just wants a reliable Android experience at a good price. As always, thank you guys very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this review of the LeEco Le Pro 3. We obviously had some hopes for this phone, especially considering the way that LeEco seems to be carrying themselves in the tech space recently, but unfortunately, the phone suffers from the same issues that we kind of expect from phones at this price point. Keep it tuned here to Android Authority for even more, and remember to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because we are your source for all things Android.